Welcome to a new video from my summer trip to Puglia, where I will show you two of the most beautiful areas of this region. Early in the morning, we drove towards the west coast of the Salento Peninsula and explored Punta Prosciutto and its surrounding areas. Here, you will find some of the most beautiful sandy beaches in Italy, bathed by the warm and turquoise waters of the Ionian Sea. This is a perfect location for anyone that loves lying all day on a beautiful paradisaical beach. After visiting a few beaches along the coast, we drove south to the beautiful Gallipoli. Its old town is located on a small island right off the mainland, connected to it by a 16th century bridge and surrounded by a 14th century walls. Its pastel-colored buildings are a perfect match to the clear waters that surround it, making it an absolute jewel of the coast of Puglia, one that you must not miss when visiting the region. We then crossed Salento towards the Adriatic Sea and stopped at Roca Vecchia. The Adriatic coastline of Puglia is typically more rugged, and Roca Vecchia is a perfect example of that, with many coves and islets surrounded by completely transparent waters, making this another dreamy location for a summer day well spent just bathing in the sun and diving into these phenomenal waters. In this area, you can also find traces of medieval structures, as well as an archaeological site that dates all the way back to the Bronze Age. Another highlight of the area is the famous Grotta della Poesia, considered by many as one of the most beautiful natural swimming pools in the world. These days, however, to protect this natural monument, swimming inside is forbidden. As lunchtime approached, we went towards Otranto, another beautiful coastal town surrounded by a bay with crystal clear waters and a couple of beaches where families and teenagers hang around, playing in the knee-deep waters for endless hours. After having lunch at one of the beachside restaurants, we went exploring the old town of Otranto, also surrounded by centuries-old walls and with a charming entanglement of narrow and winding cobbled streets in its interior. As the heat of the afternoon approached its peak, we sat at the top of the walls facing the harbor, with a gentle sea breeze blowing in our faces, and we raced against a fast-melting ice cream in an attempt to cool down a little bit. We then went on exploring the town, walking along its interior and around its perimeter, admiring the traditional Salentine architecture, the history of Otranto, and the views all around it. A day in Salento would not be complete without actually diving in its waters, and our chosen spot was the Torre dell'Orso beach, with views to the beautiful Le Due Sorelle, or the Two Sister Rocks, rising from the calm waters just off coast. After a couple of hours lying on the sand and going for a few swims, we climbed up the cliffs through a passage behind the beach and went along the coast for a closer look of Le Due Sorelle and the clear waters that surround them. To end the afternoon, we drove to the nearby area of Torre Sant'Andrea, another beautiful rugged stretch of coast with many faraglioni, coves, and natural arches, a favorite diving spot for local kids, with the most courageous of them enticed by the rest of the group and against the better judgment of the adults in the area, jumping from the top of the highest cliff. The energy was so light and summery that I decided to sit down by the water and enjoy the scenery, relax for some time while reading a book with the laughter of the kids, the splashes of their dives, and the constant back and forth of the waves gently caressing the rocks as a very soothing soundtrack. As evening came around, we went for dinner at the hotel Torre Maizza, a 5 centuries old masseria surrounded by olive groves and beautifully renovated into a luxury hotel. We had a perfect dinner on the restaurant's terrace, overlooking the lemon orchard as the night fell over the masseria. The menu was filled with very tastefully sounding traditional Puglian dishes, and we went for a burrata with fresh tomatoes and shrimp with asparagus for entrees, followed by orecchiette with broccoli cream and peas ravioli with truffles for the first course. And for mains, we had stewed artichokes and seared tuna, before finishing this delicious dinner on a sweet note with a semifreddo and a lemon tart. After dinner, we stayed for a little longer at their Jam Festival, a celebration with traditional music and the typical Puglian colorful illuminations. The following day, we drove early in the morning towards the Gargano Peninsula in the far north part of Puglia. Our first stop was the paradisiacal Baía delle Zaccare, an almost fully rose set of two picturesque beaches surrounded by white cliffs and dense vegetation. After relaxing at the beach for a couple of hours, we then went for lunch at a remote restaurant Al Trabucco da Mimì, located at the top of a promontory with beautiful 360 views of the sea and the coastline. We started off with a cocktail, enjoying the fantastic views and the amazing sun, and then proceeded with what has been one of the best fish menus and seaside environments I have ever experienced in Italy. All the food of this 5 courses meal was so deceitfully simple, yet so very tasteful, with the freshest seafood you could have, and with a very refined Italian touch to every dish served. This was one of my absolute favorite meals in Puglia, and if you are visiting the Gargano Peninsula, it is well worth the detour, not only for the food, but also for the views and the whole quietness of the landscape. After lunch, we went spending a couple of hours exploring the coastal town of Vieste and its surroundings. This is a very picturesque and charming town, not very widely known, probably because it is located far from the center of Puglia, but it is a place that many Italians choose to go for their summer vacations. Right beside Vieste, you can find a couple of beaches surrounded by white limestone cliffs, with the old town perched on top. On our way back at the end of the afternoon, we stopped here and there along the coast, and the views of Arco di San Felice are especially worth a stop for a picture. For our dinner, we went to Il Frantoio, a small masseria with a guest house and a very homey restaurant. After a quick tour of the property, together with all the dining guests for that evening, we sat at the vaulted ceiling room, beautifully decorated with traditional furniture and objects from Puglia. For dinner, we had a menu of half a dozen courses, paired with 3 different wines and with very traditional and rustic food, made with fresh ingredients from their farm and from the surrounding region. This was the best way to finish another day, in very welcoming environment and along a comforting and traditional meal. I hope you have liked coming with me again along my trip to Puglia. If you want to see more from my trip to this beautiful region, don't forget to subscribe, as I will be posting more from my trip to Puglia in the upcoming weeks.